Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting for the Libraries Facilities Financing Authority to order. And we have a roll call, please.
Chair Goldstein, City of Capitola.
Present.
Vice Chair Bernal, City of Santa Cruz.
Here.
Alternate John Wise, City of Scotts Valley, sorry. Susan Morielli, County of Santa Cruz.
And I'm here as well.
All right.
Good evening.
Rich, is there any additional materials for distribution this evening?
There is none.
All right. Any changes tonight to our LFFA agenda?
I have one. I was hoping that we could very briefly discuss item C as regular business. I just have one suggested change to make from that recommendation.
All right.
So with that, I would move the consent agenda unless anybody from the public would like to comment on it.
Well, let's take it in a second. I think we're on oral
Oh, sorry,
communications.
sorry.
Then we can move to the consent.
I'm sorry.
All right. Oral communications. Does anyone want to address the LFFA board on any items that are not on today's agenda? Seeing none, I will close the public comment on the LFFA and our executive director report.
It is attached. I have no additional comments.
Okay. So now, Susan, that takes us to the consent calendar.
And so I would move the consent calendar items A and B.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion carries unanimously. So then that takes us to item C, which is to approve an administrative support services contract with the City of Santa Cruz, pages 12 and 13.
Yes, and so I was a little confused about this item because I just didn't understand what it was that we were doing. And Rich explained to me that the LFFA has contracts with Jones Hall, Suzanne, Harold, NBS, and with our director, Mr. Hill, and that the city is basically handling the payment of those bills, and that's what this is intended to cover. They don't have other administrative duties other than those. So I was going to suggest that I know that we're working on an agreement to reimburse the city for costs associated with the JPA. And I was thinking that maybe we could, because the LFFA doesn't have a financial budget and means of paying these bills, that maybe what we should do is include something in that agreement which would allow these, the details of this to be clearly understood. And in the interim, that what we would do is, we have already approved those contracts, so what we would be doing is requesting the city finance department to continue with the administrative support to handle the payment of those contracts, which I think is the only thing they're doing. So that would be my recommendation, and unless there's questions, I'll make it as a motion. Does that work?
All right, so is there a second? Richard,
No, actually, I think that's a direct, simple description of what we're trying to do here.
Okay. So basically the issue is that we've already authorized these contracts with the LFA. City of Santa Cruz is incurring costs, and you're suggesting let's just roll this into the overall
Agreement for administration, and in the meantime, we would be authorizing the city to make payments to Jones Hall, Suzanne, Harold, NBS, and our director Hill, which are the 4 agreements that this body has.
I would just amend that and say I'm an employee. I'm not a contractor.
Okay.
And so the agreements that have been approved by the LFFA are those agreements that we were talking about, and support services include not only the payment of those agreements, but review to assure insurance requirements are met, and those kinds of things.
And then we'll get the details of how much that cost us ever so shortly from now.
Yes, and we're in the process of doing that.
Right.
I'm okay with it.
Thank you.
Entertaining it.
Great, thank you.
All right. So do we need an action on this, or frankly, we could just continue this item because at this point the status quo.
Why don't you go ahead and take the action as
Yeah, because I
moved.
think that'll help the finance department, because at this
Yes,
point, they don't have any authority to have the LFFA
There's
acknowledged.
ambiguity in our role with regard to LFA, so it just help all parties confirm
That we're going to pay back.
for the
Right.
LFA.
And I support that clarification.
Okay, so again, the motion would be to authorize the city of Santa Cruz to provide the necessary administrative costs to oversee the contracts with the LFFA for Jones Hall, Suzanne Harrell, MBS, and our employment agreement and services and supplies for Ms. Hill.
Is there a second? All right, second by the City of Santa Cruz. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay, so with that, I will adjourn the LFFA meeting and re-adjourn our board as the Santa Cruz Public Library Board for our regular meeting.
You can't adjourn us already. You said re-adjourn us.
Sorry, I will
Reconvene us.
reconvene us, thank you. Call us to order. And I
Only
will-
because we're at a library.
And I will also note that the members present are still the same members present at the last meeting, and now we have a presentation. Yes.
Yes, I'd like to introduce Denise Brick and Judy Russell, who are in charge of volunteer services for the public library. I thought this was an appropriate meeting for their presentation since we're talking about all of the resources, financial and staff, and volunteers are a huge part of that. Denise and Judy.
Thank you. Martine and Marcus, you may have heard some of this before, so please feel free to fill in maybe some gaps that we might have. Thank you so much for the time this evening. A little bit of background. Back in 2011, up until 2011, the volunteers were under the auspices of the Friends. So the Friends had the volunteers who did the book sales, but also the volunteers who were in the branches. And in the fall 2010, there was a separation, and the library became responsible for all the volunteers in the branches, and those are the folks that Judy and I interview, place, oversee, and get to know. So that's what our presentation will be about this evening. And we're getting there. It's a fabulous PowerPoint. Wait till you see it. So right now we have about 171 active volunteers on our books. They don't all volunteer every month. Some come in once a month, and if they happen to be on vacation during that one time, they don't sign in. So you'll see later that we have an average of about 135, 140 volunteers a month. Our goals in the volunteer office are first and foremost to support the mission of Santa Cruz Public Libraries. We also want to promote the understanding both to the volunteers, prospective volunteers, and the staff that our volunteers are here to support the staff, not replace the staff. So they're always in supportive roles, helping us to deliver the programs to the patrons. We also, what's really important is that we provide a rewarding experience for the volunteers, because the key to retaining volunteers is to make sure that they feel useful and that we actually place them in areas where they feel their skills, their talents, their gifts are being used. So we want to make sure that we do our utmost to place them in areas where they will have that experience. We also, of course, recognize that volunteers are critical to bringing our message out to the broader community. They're our voice in the community. And actually we have two volunteers here today. Martha and Cindy are actually also volunteers. Martha at Garfield Park, Cindy at the South Beach. Our process. We function a lot like a cross between a human resources agency and a matchmaking agency. So our process is first, my goal is to make sure that I protect the institution of the library. So I'm very much keyed into risk management. That being said, we work closely with the branch managers, with staff. When they identify a need where a volunteer would be most useful, we develop a task description. So every volunteer role has a task description associated with it. And this is really important too from a risk management standpoint, because when volunteers operate within the confines of their task description, they're protected under the Volunteer Protection Act of 1997. So a lot of our roles, it's not that critical, but some are, like our book buddies, where they're out in the community seeing homebound patrons, vulnerable populations. We have to really really spell out what their duties are. So then we begin recruitment. We go through volunteermatch.com, email blast. We have an email list of prospective volunteers, past volunteers, current volunteers. If we have a new opportunity, we send that out. And word of mouth is actually one of our best recruitment tools. We respond to all inquiries. We don't place every single person who wants to volunteer with us. We're pretty selective. We have more applicants than we have roles for them, and we want to make sure, again, that we find the right person for the task. One reason for that is we don't want the volunteer placement to create extra work for the branch manager or the staff. So what we can do to make the best match possible makes their job easier. We have an online application process where we review those, and then we schedule interviews. So we actually sit down with the applicant. We want to make sure it's a good fit, that they understand what the roles are. And then when we all agree it's a good fit, we have a volunteer handbook that we review with them one-on-one. We have confidentiality oath that they sign. We have a risk of liability agreement that they sign. Volunteers are not covered under workers' comp, but we do have volunteer insurance. And then just an agreement of understanding that volunteering does not mean that they are first in line to be hired by the library. And then we actually go with them to the branch or wherever their assignment is. We introduce them. Sometimes the branch manager or a staff member will oversee their orientation, or we will train them. And then they're placed. And where do we place them? So we adopt a shelf assistant where a volunteer will adopt a range of shelves, and it's their responsibility to clean, organize, and keep the shelves tidy. We have a sign on the shelf that says this shelf adopted by volunteer first name, so it's theirs. We have book buddies that go into our homes of our homebound patrons, deliver materials, return materials to the library. Tails to Tails, which is our very popular therapy dog, therapy animal program. Homework help. Touch team coach for our seniors who are suffering memory loss. They learn how to engage with different kinds of memory games with their caregivers. Dial a story reader. Brown's groomer. Some of our branches have people to help with weeding. Book discussion group leader, face painters, book menders, chess coach. Here at Aptos we have a chess coach, crafts assistant, Minecraft guru, master Lego builder, event photographer, event helper, and book selectors. We have something for pretty much everybody. So those are our opportunities. And now Judy.
Thank you. So once we have them on board, we want to make sure that they want to stay on board, that it continues to be rewarding. And not only do we want to make sure that it's rewarding for them, but we also want to make sure that they feel connected to the larger picture. That when they do become a volunteer, every volunteer we explain that you are representing the library, and we need to equip them to do that. So one of the ways that we do that is we stay in touch through a monthly volunteer newsletter called Whispers in the Stacks. And the newsletter varies from month to month, and really we try to hit on certain things. One thing that we want to keep volunteers abreast on are current events. So one of the newsletters that Denise just passed out has information on Measure S. So they get that to their inbox so they can open up and then become educated on that. Another volunteer newsletter was during the month of Volunteer Week. So basically the whole newsletter was thanking the volunteers for all that they do and fabulous quotes from the staff and how appreciated they are. And then this past newsletter, we talked about a very wonderful program recently implemented called Peoples and Stories at the jails, in which book discussions are held with the inmates. And so it's multiple purposes for that, but mainly to keep them connected with that, especially that's coming up at the time. And then we always put, oh yes, and we also have other volunteer opportunities for them to respond to. We also stay in touch through email blasts, so we can say, especially if something is brought up last second, and it says, okay, what we need face painters last minute for this. We can say, oh, don't worry, we'll send an email blast. And sure enough, we'll get a response from people that say, sure, we'd like to do some face painting and special events. And then our very latest email blast was the new library director. We wanted to make sure that they got that email before they saw anything in the Sentinel. And so that was our latest email blast. Recognition awards for hours of milestones. So what is done is when a volunteer has accomplished 100 hours of service, or 200 or 300, so incremental 100 hours, they are mailed a letter and then a book plate. And so this one would say this book selected by volunteer with their name, and it says the Santa Cruz Public Libraries presents this book plate to the name of the volunteer in recognition of his or her dedicated service. And what they're instructed to do is to take this book plate and find any book they want in the library where they volunteer, and take the sticker and stick it on the cover, on the inside cover. So whoever can check this out can see that. And so we just received in the mail, it was very exciting, a thank you note from a volunteer, Judy, who has a great name. And she volunteers in the Capitola branch. And at the end of her letter, she wrote, and she had just received a book plate. She said, my book plate is on Dem Books by Bob Garner. Not only is it well written and illustrated, but I also have fond memories of moving and singing to it with my grandson years ago. We had fun being silly. And so it was exciting to receive that. Another way that we stay in touch is our annual National Volunteer Week, in which we give the volunteers a gift and 2 letters. And so this year, the volunteers all received a nice pack to keep your lunch cool, and then I always forget what these are called. A stylus pen. And then it's actually engraved and saying thank you for volunteering at the Santa Cruz Public Libraries. And they also received a letter signed by Denise and I from our office, and also a letter signed by Interim Director Janice, as well as by your Chair Jane. So wanting to acknowledge the fact. And these letters weren't just generic. It had their first name on the letter, and in the body of the letter it stated specifically what they were volunteering for. And along with that, we had our annual ice cream social, and we actually had it right here. And because you can't go wrong with ice cream, so that's what we did for that. And in addition to that, while that was going on, we knew there wasn't enough time, so you're gonna miss out, sorry, but we had a slideshow showing of all the volunteers. We sent out basically a blast email to the staff and said, if you get a chance, could you maybe find like a sheet of paper, write, thank you very much, we love our volunteers, take pictures and we'll make a slideshow. And just to let you know how the staff feels about volunteers, we were actually surprised within the matter of a couple days. It was like, boom, just all of these pictures and people taking the time to do that. So this is one of our favorite ones, just because they did it a little artistically with We Love Our Volunteers. Okay, and so how are we doing? So now for the numbers people here. Starting in 2012, the library started with a proprietary web-based database to track hours and see how we're doing. And that started in 2012 because just prior to that, as Denise had shared, we had migrated volunteers over from the Friends of the Volunteers to Santa Cruz Public Libraries, and now we actually have 2 separate volunteers. And so this is tracking only Santa Cruz Public Libraries volunteers. So as you can see, starting in 2012, we had an average of 87 volunteers per month, and now in 2015, we have an average of 127 volunteers per month, so a 46% growth. And for total volunteer hours, in 2012, we had a total of 2,538 hours per, 7,538 hours, and now in 2015, we have 13,772 hours, so that's 76% growth. So I don't know if it's causation or correlation, but it does look like our volunteers are even becoming more productive. So that is for your comparison.
All right, bringing it home. We're in the people business. Really, that's what we're about. It's about the folks we get to work with, and they all have stories. And so I thought maybe you'd like to hear about 3 of our volunteers and 3 very short stories. So Eric on the left came to us. He began volunteering in July of 2013, just before he entered his junior year in high school. We had been trying to find a computer coach for the downtown branch. We've been through the CSE students, the Rio students, no luck at all. So when I received an application from a high school student, I was dubious. And Eric showed up with an actual booklet that he wrote specifically for the task. No question, we placed Eric as a computer coach, and he has been amazing. He shows up consistently, except for last summer he did an internship in Washington, D.C., so we decided to, let him have that. But he also received the award from the city for Volunteer of the Year. That ceremony that is conducted during the Volunteer Week celebration. The sad news is, it's sad and happy, bittersweet. Eric turned in his resignation next Sunday as his last day because he wants to devote his time to his studies at San Jose State. But he wrote this: I do want to express my deepest appreciation for this rewarding opportunity that was presented to me 3 years ago. The Santa Cruz Public Library has given me an amazing experience to learn and share my skills with the community. Because of this volunteer position, I know that I will want to focus my career on helping others. I am truly grateful for this. Doesn't get much better than that. Isn't that awesome? He's an amazing young man. A pilot as well. Amazing young man. Trisha is an amazing person as well. She submitted her volunteer application in January of 2014, shortly after she moved to Santa Cruz County. And on her application, she noted that she was recently appointed to the Cal Humanities Board and was working on the California Reads Initiative. Well, guess what? So are we, working on that initiative. Janice was at that time, so Trisha helped Janice with the War Comes Home project. Then Trisha volunteered to make all the phone calls for donations for our summer reading program culmination, the Festival of the Book. For most people, it's an odious job. She loves it. She calls all the vendors, loves getting donations. So she's done that now. This is her 3rd year. Then she signed up as a Tails to Tails volunteer with her standard poodle, Edward. She volunteers at this branch in Capitola. No, just Capitola. And she's a founding member of the Aptos Friends. So she is what we call high-value volunteer. She just loves the libraries and keeps giving back. And then finally, Leo. Leo is 96 years old. Leo walks 4 miles round trip to his duties at the Ransom 40 Library twice a week. We figure he's logged over 3,000 miles in the 8 years that he's been volunteering to help with periodicals at the Ransom 40 branch. His last shift was last month. He's moving over the hill to be closer to his daughter, and I know he will be missed. This photo was taken at the thank you potluck we have for him at the branch, and we just love, he told us amazing stories. He's an aeronautical engineer by education and profession, and he just regaled us with stories, so Leo's pretty amazing. So we thought this was a fitting end to our presentation. Janice's quote, "Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much." And we feel that way about the volunteers. So thank you for your time. Any questions?
Thank you, Denise. That's wonderful. All right. So turning back to our agenda, additional materials. Do we have any additional materials?
What's wrong with it?
We did. We got additional copies, I think, of our...
Oh, a readable sign. Are you insinuating that some of us may need a little bit larger print?
It was for us, not necessarily for you.
Good, well, I have an extra copy that I'm getting. All right, additions or deletions. I did get a request to reorder our agenda, and I'm Is Sean Campbell here?
No.
I'm not seeing Sean Campbell, so why don't we do this? Why don't we take item C first this evening, do a little bit of reorganization, and then we can see whether or not the Library Commission Chair is here, and then go in order from that point on. So, 10C, item 10C.
Oh, item 10C.
We'll take item 10C first in terms of our general business. And I request to move that up as well.
So, not clear, Sean wanted to move it up and he's not here? Is that what that?
No, Sean's not here. He was going to be first on the agenda.
Oh, I see,
So I'm
I
gonna take
see.
item C first, and then we'll go from there. We'll take
I see, okay.
Yes, I know. Yeah, we got other items first. Okay, and then other oral communication items are not on tonight's agenda. All right, with that, I would close the public comment, and that would take us then to a report on our library. Jen?
Okay, first I wanted to do the staff recognition, and this is a great opportunity to recognize two people, Mary Oliva and Lorena Lopez, and they're both, it was entirely different incidents, but the same kind of thing. Commitment to the library and going the extra like 3.5 miles instead of the extra mile. And this is especially always heartwarming because these nominations are made by their colleagues and their fellow staff. And it's lovely to be able to recognize them. Neither of them are here, but I would like to recognize their commitment to the library and knowing, even on their day off or whatever, that the library service needed to take place. So I'm very happy to have them recommended as well.
So are they here? Are they here?
They are not here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that one. Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to make my report very short because we have a long agenda. We're having a very active week. We put on in front of you the calendar for May. You can see these are just some of the things that are happening in May. And then we have the summer reading program, which is going to start sooner than you realize, on June 1st. We'll go into the first 2 weeks of August, and then we have a participation. We have a program for kids, teens, and adults. So all of you can participate in summer reading as well. So we'll sign you up and get you started. We had a very successful yesterday. We had a Star Wars celebration. I was Yoda, believe it or not. There's apparently photographic evidence somewhere of this. But we had over 500 children come to the downtown branch and meet Stormtrooper. And I will confess, I have never seen a Star Wars movie, so a lot of this I'm sort of picking up. But there were Stormtroopers and various other very important Star Wars people there. And they went around, and we had different planets in the branches. I was at the last planet, and I took in the entries to the lottery. There was a lottery to win 20 pounds of Legos. Now, this was very thrilling for the children, not so thrilling for the parents. We have, I can't tell you the name of the young man yet. He's probably finding out right about now, but I will tell you this because I can't resist. We had the drawing this morning. We called, we got his mother. He was in school. It turns out that yesterday, May the 4th, was his birthday. Oh. So on May the 4th, he won 20 pounds of Legos. So we will have a photo op and we will be able to announce his name. So that was yesterday. And I did think about wearing my Yoda costume today, but I decided not.
Yesterday I was walking from City Hall to get coffee downtown and I saw you out there with all the kids and you made a very believable Yoda. I almost thought and a bunch of kids asking, where's the Stormtrooper, where's the Stormtrooper? And I heard he was on the second floor of the library. So
Yeah.
all these kids around.
It was great. Yeah, we had a good one. And that's my report.
Thank you. It takes us to item 7, book from the Friends of Santa Cruz Libraries.
That's me. Hi, good evening. I'm the treasurer for the Friends of the Library. So this is my first time doing this. I'm not quite sure. It looks like we had two things. We partnered with the library to do Earth Day and the Volunteer Appreciation Party. Sadly, I was not able to attend either, but I heard they were well attended and very good. Second, we had a meeting with the Brandon Capitola chapter, and we met with the treasurer. So sorry, that was myself. And the treasurer. I'm a little nervous. Was a good meeting though. All right, in our future plans, we have our spring book sale coming up Memorial Day weekend, the 27th and 28th at the Civic Center downtown. So we're all looking forward to that, and working with the volunteer grant group for the Redwood Mountain Fair coming up on June 4th and 5th. And that's our report.
And I'm sorry I missed your name.
Oh, I probably did not say it because I'm a little nervous. Michelle Kennedy.
It's so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Well, thank you. Are there comments by any board members? Okay, seeing none, that'll take us to the consent calendar. The item on the consent calendar anyone wishes to pull.
I'd like to ask that we move item F for just a couple of questions.
Okay.
Maybe we could put it after D or something.
Sure, we'll figure out. We'll put it at the end of the evening. Is that okay?
That's
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so we'll take item F at the end of the evening. Is there a motion to approve the remaining items on consent?
Second.
Any discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, so our consent calendar is approved except for item F. So that takes us to number 10, our general business, and Sean, we actually did a small reorganization and we moved item C up to number 1. So we'll be right with you here in a second. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lisa. You have a staff report for us this evening?
I do. Good evening, members of the board. I'm Murphy. I'm the City Santa Cruz City Director. Thank you for switching the item up. I am very pleased to be before you to present a staff report approving the hiring of your new library director, Susan Nemitz. I'll give you a little brief background of our process and how we arrived at that decision. So last fall, as you know, Teresa Lambert retired, and the board instituted the opportunity to conduct a recruitment. We retained the services of June Garcia. She's a well-known library director, recruiter, very professional in her field. And so what we did was we started off with doing some community meetings. We met with the board, we met with the staff to get together and get some ideas of the ideal characteristics for a board member, for a library director, what we'd like to see in the director. So after we did that, we opened it up for national search, and we got candidates from all over the country. It was pretty amazing. After initial screening, we screened the candidates down to 6 candidates. And then from there, those 6 candidates met with 2 different panels that were composed of library directors, board staff members from the different agencies, some community members as well. And from there, we narrowed it down to 3. We invited 3 candidates back for a 2-day process. Imagine it's quite a lengthy process. They spent those 2 days. The first day, they met individually, they met with the library staff, library management, and they took tours of couple of the different branches. And each of those opportunities, the library staff had feedback forms. And in those feedback forms, they were able to comment on the candidates. So then our June Garcia, she compiled all that information together and gave a summary report for the board to consider, which they did on the following day, which the candidates came back for an interview with the board. And so upon conclusion of all that information, it was a unanimous decision that Susan Nemitz was the preferred candidate, and it was also the unanimous decision of the recommendation of the staff, both the staff and the management team as well. So that was really quite nice. And she will be coming to this community probably in the middle of June. late June is the anticipated level. And what we are anticipating coming back in June with the actual agreement with her, as well as agreements between the JP board and the city of Santa Cruz to administer those agreements as well. And with that concludes my presentation.
All right. Are there any questions of staff? Okay. Is there any public comment on hiring of Susan? I think that's a good sign. I saw a lot of heads nodding when everyone was talking about the process. I know a lot of you participated. I want to thank you all so much for your participation. I'm really excited. I'm sure other board members will have any comments as well, but I just think Susan's been such a great fit. And, it's exciting that she wants to come here, and it's exciting that we're going to get someone of her caliber here. So.
Well, I would echo those sentiments, and the only addition I'd like to make is to thank Lisa. She did a lot of work on this for us, and she did a terrific job. So thank you so much for all of your efforts. It was really a coordination challenge, and she just was on it all the time. So thank you to everyone who participated, and to Lisa especially for all your help.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good process, really thorough, really inclusive, which is really good. And Susan just seems to be actually a really great fit. And I know there's a strong desire to have new leadership, and it's a good transition for the system to make, and it's a good time. So I'm certainly really looking forward to her coming on board. So thank you, Lisa, everyone else as well.
Yeah, June Garcia did a great job finding a broad array of amazing, talented people. I know more about libraries than I ever knew before. As being the alternate guy that was sent, so it's been an education for me. But I have to say, listening to all of them, they're all exciting, but Susan really did stand out. I wasn't here to be a part of the board interview when they came, 3 candidates, but I did get to sit through the initial oral boards, and Susan was just, it really impressed me. Very articulate, certainly a very broad experience, and I think she's going to be a wonderful fit in this county, and I'm excited about it. So.
Yeah, we're very lucky. Yeah. So I would make a motion to approve the hiring of Susan Nemeth for the position of the Director of the Santa Cruz Public Library, consistent with the terms that are outlined in the staff report, and direct staff to prepare an employment agreement and related documents for the June 2nd, 2016 board meeting.
Second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
As it is required to be. Who said we couldn't do it?
It's too bad Susan couldn't be here. Maybe we could have Skyped her in. Yeah, let her know it's touch and go there for a minute. Well, thanks everyone for the great work on this. So then let's go back to item A on our general business agenda this evening, which is an update or an oral update about the Library Advisory Commission. Staff, do you have any introduction here?
We did have our very first meeting on April 19th, and Sean Campbell was elected chair. He even said he wanted to do it. And so then we began, each member talked about why they wanted to be part of things, and that was very heartening to hear. They are in the middle of talking about the bylaws that they want to have. That is not concluded. It will come just forward when they have a draft of the bylaws that they would like to present. But I would like to introduce Sean. And Sean is here to just say hi and start the communication going.
If you don't mind, I'd like to say a few words about our commission. So good evening, I'm Sean Campbell, and I'm the newly elected chair by acclamation. So our 7-member commission is comprised of a really experienced set of people, retired library professionals, members of the Friends, past members of the former governing board, and really passionate library enthusiasts. During our first meeting, we did the bylaws and we made a meeting schedule. We also talked about what we were really interested in doing, how we could help the system. Various suggestions came up, optimizing the value of services to current users and certainly new potential users was one. Other members expressed interest in providing some advice on the layout and design of the potential improvements that may occur. Clearly representing specific communities to the whole systems, members felt pretty strongly that they were able to provide a community voice for their area. And then, I think most importantly, the ability to study issues in detail to enable your board to conduct your work. I know you all have a number of things that you're doing in your day jobs and a number of boards that you serve on. And so, we really think as people who are, really passionate about this one thing, that we can help this whole system by helping your board be successful. Obviously, we're clearly looking forward to working with the new director and, helping to continue to connect, inspire, and inform everybody. So, thanks. Appreciate it.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Sean, are you planning on coming to our board meetings or having somebody from the advisory body join us when we have our meetings?
I think that would be useful if your board is interested in that.
Yeah, as one member, I certainly would love to be able to maintain that ongoing dialogue. It just seems to me that, as things happen here, it's kind of good to pay attention to a little bit of the details, and it might facilitate the communication, because I know all of us are very eager to get the input of the group. It is a very distinguished group, and I think we're fortunate to have all those folks volunteering in a different way for the public library system. So.
Okay. In a sense of maybe a regular report?
Or just whatever you feel would be appropriate. Just let us know what you're doing, and you'll be listening into what we're doing. And
absolutely.
If there's communication. I mean, for example, I know we have later on in our agenda, we have the budget materials coming, and I'm hopeful that, you would look at that and give us any advice you have.
Yes, definitely we plan to put that on our next agenda and provide you the advice that we're able to come up.
Well, this bigger one works better than the little one. Well, thank you. Thank you for your service as well.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments?
I just want to say I think we're very lucky to have such a dedicated group of citizens in the community that are, like you said, library enthusiasts. We're so lucky, So the feedback is really critical, as Susan said.
Yeah.
Because we don't really have that background. We're becoming enthusiasts, but they're lucky you are, so it's really critical. So thank you. Thank you.
I'll just reiterate those comments, and I do hope we can work together. I think, the JPA was relatively broadly, and as we've discussed on the phone, I think as the new director comes on board and the library commission and this board will get our sea legs under us, I think we'll kind of establish that relationship. I think close communication is going to be important. In Capitol, we've actually set up a Capitol Library Advisory Commission that includes me and our Barbara Gorson, who's a member of the commission as well, to focus on Capitol specific issues. So we have lots of opportunities for people to participate and provide feedback into library operations. Thank you. Okay, I don't believe any action is necessary on this item. So with that, I would move to item 10B, which is receive and discuss the draft budget for fiscal year 16-17. Staff is in a presentation.
What I can highlight some of the comments I made in my budget report, and then I'm sure there will be questions, and we can take questions. We have a lot of, I took the liberty of giving you a lot of supplementary material, because this will be the first time that this board is considering the budget. So I had the current policy through 2011 that was passed, and you have some information there on some of our fund policies, and then I will just point out some things from my report and then take questions. This is an overview of the budget, as you can tell, but even with the overview, you need a larger font. And what I will do, Marcus helps us put the budget together, and there will be questions, and there will be explanations that he will be able to give us. So between the two of us, we will try to answer your questions and be prepared for what a supplementary report you may need for the next meeting. So this is basically a status quo budget, assuming we're assuming if Measure S passes, we will have plenty to do with the facilities, and so we have kept the budget straightforward in a good way. We have not added any other things other than the hope that we're working on facilities, and also the contract which you approved several months ago, but now will start taking place. Probably start sometime in July. We hope at the latest it will end and be completed in all branches by the end of August, but I'll talk about that in a minute. We can start with the revenues. These are consistent with all of the numbers that we have received from the City of Santa Cruz and the County of Santa Cruz. I attached the fund balance policy so you can see what we are operating under when we put these things together. There's just some things I want to point out in expenditures under personnel. We are making the recommendation that our administrative assistant 2 be increased to 40 hours, and that is because now with the addition of the Library Advisory Commission, we want to have support for that committee as well. All of the work that the library needs to do, the administrative assistants need to do, has not gone away, and so it will help us considerably to have those extra hours. And what that means is that Helga will have a backup, so that she gets to go on vacation or be sick or something, and then we will have somebody who can step in who knows all of the procedures. Likewise, we're recommending an increase of 5 hours for the account clerk because our revenues and our kiosks are very successful, and we're having more invoices to process, and we could really use those extra 5 hours. The third thing that we are recommending is to reclassify the branch managers at the 4 smaller branches so that all of our branch managers will be at the library assistant 3 level. And the reason, we have several reasons that we want to do that. One of them is that the City of Santa Cruz did an entire classification study very recently, and for the library, the #1 recommendation that was made in that report was this very thing, that those 4 branch managers be put at the same level as all the other branch managers because they have the same responsibilities. They're responsible for a building. If something happens in the branch, they are responsible. They're responsible for the staff. They're responsible for what happens, and so the square footage really doesn't matter. And we completely agree with that. And so that is an expense of $32,000. It's something that we felt that the budget could support, and we recommend doing that. We have in information technology, we have several changes because of the scenic contract, and we have supporting documents there. If you have questions about that, as we go through, I'll be glad to address those, and Lynn is here so we can address those things too. Because we now take credit cards, we now have merchant bank fees, and so we had to add that line in the budget. Now, what I want to explain is the bottom part of this very long sheet. Under extraordinary one-time expenditures, these are anticipated. We don't know what's going to happen, and we want to let you know if any of these things come to pass, what it would cost. We did an estimate of how much it would cost to rewire and recable all of the branches should Measure S not pass. If Measure S passes, the rewire and recabling will be included in that. Should it not pass, we will still need to do that work to be able to take advantage of the scenic contract. So that amount is theirs. If Measure S passes, we don't need to spend that amount of money. The other thing connected to the scenic contract is that when we switch over from what we are currently doing to the scenic contract, there may be a lapse. And we don't know that we are first on the list. We think we're going to fit the timeline very well. But it is possible that we might have to spend some month-to-month costs until the complete switch is taken. We had a phone call this week, and it seems like all of the branches will be on board at the end of August, so we might use some of that $106,000, but probably not all of it. I just wanted to explain so that those are expenses we might have or we might not have, and I wanted to point that out. And then just because it has been a topic of conversation in the past, we did make an estimate for the increased hours, the increased 33 hours. That will have to be reworked because we now have new information on PERS and healthcare, so that estimate will have to go up. And I know you have lots of questions.
I do. So
I'm surprised.
Yeah, my usual, I have 50 million questions. Okay, so the first question, I'll take them in order of how you presented them.
Okay.
So the first question that I have is, I had not before read these fund balance policies and the reserves policies, and I felt like it was interesting reading. And my suggestion was going to be to refer those policies to the director for her review and to report back to us in December of this year with any recommendations that she has on those policies. For now, they are what they are, and Marcus.
Let me just intercede. There's those policies, the former board took action in June of 2013 to update the policies.
Right, I saw that.
So what you don't have in the package is updates to those policies that turned it into a 2-month operating reserve and adopted a surplus policy.
Okay,
So
well, maybe that's all the more reason why the director could review them for us.
So I think we can bring those back to make sure that that is...
Right, so again, if it's agreeable, what I would like to do is refer the fund balance policy and the reserves policy to the director and have her come back with a review. And again, I don't think we should do anything for this budget year, but maybe for next budget year we might want to make a change. I don't know if anybody has any comments about that. If not, I'll move to the next item ahead. Okay, so the next item relates to, now you mentioned the report on the classification review.
Yes.
Who did that report?
It was because the staff, our employees in the city of Santa Cruz, did a study of the workforce and made recommendations. They identified certain classifications to look at. There were several in the library that they wanted to look at. And then they made a report back about how those positions fell, either compared with other library systems, in our case, other library systems, and just equal across the staff. And their primary recommendation from that to the library was this reclassification of these 4 people, these 4 positions.
Okay, so, and are these positions in one of the labor groups? Are they in?
They are in SEIU now, and they would move to OE3 supervisors. I have spoken to both units.
Okay, so this is another thing that I think we should really wait and get the advice of our new director on. I'm fine with the budget recommendation to approve the appropriations, and I don't think it's a bad idea, but I do think, I would wonder, like, are we really going to pay the main branch library manager the same as some of the smaller?
The downtown branch manager is a different classification.
Okay, so see, that would be the kind of thing that I would just wonder about, and it's only because I don't know. It's not because it's a bad idea.
Okay.
So if that would be agreeable, I would suggest that we refer the request for the classification to review and recommend as soon as she can, which again, if she could do that in July or August, that would be great. And then when you look at the fund balance policy, and again, we'll get to this when we get to item F, I noticed that there are fund balances totaling about $4.6 million, which seems like a pretty hefty fund balance for a library system. And it includes about 1.2 million of excess reserves and designations. I forget how they categorize them. But anyway, I just noted that because I do think that there's resources there in the budget to be aware of, and we should understand that. Now, with regard to the, let's see, with regard to the administrative assistant and the account clerk, I thought those made really good recommendations and sounded like we really need them, so thank you for that. Now, this issue with regard to the wiring, I don't know if I understand what you're thinking about, because Measure S funds are going to be distributed to each of the jurisdictions in order to do the construction, and that is going to require a program plan and an architect and whatever. And I have the impression you want to do this wiring like now, right? You don't want to wait.
We have a rollout plan that Lynn could address.
Yeah, right now, we don't need to do wiring. We can wait, if Measure S passes, we can wait for each branch to be built out, and we just have to manage expectations for the public, really, because we will not be going full speed as fast as we can go until branches are rewired. So, you know, if I had my druthers, I would certainly like to wire the worst 3 branches, and those are the ones that I got quotes for, because they are really failing. We have connectivity issues. We're constantly being called out to troubleshoot wiring issues. However, we will still be able to slowly roll out. So really, I'm just trying to plan for any eventuality. So if we do not get Measure S passed, the branches will need to be rewired regardless.
Okay, so, and the 3 branches that you're referring to?
The worst branches are downtown, Bransford, and Aptos.
So just so I understand, I guess what you're suggesting is hypothetically your account control is one of the 7 branches that you estimated at 74,000. So basically what you're saying is it doesn't make sense to spend $10,000 account control when we're going to tear the building down. And it would just limbo along until, okay.
Exactly, because
and then it would be built into the
It'll be built properly with plenum and Cat 6 wiring to, mitigate any fire hazard and to make sure that we're future-proofing this. So if we put the right kind of cabling in, we won't have to touch it for another 20 years.
And how much is it to do the main branch?
The main branch
Roughly
was, yes.
Oh, it's in the
52,000.
Yeah, I put it in my, yes, it's 52,387. That does take into account prevailing wage.
Right.
Which, of course, and then Cat 6 wiring is more expensive than Cat 5e because it will go faster and it does have the added safety features.
So let's be realistic.
Yes.
If the city started to do their program planning on the main branch today, would you say 4 years, Martine, would be realistic to do construction?
4 years?
Well, I mean,
but it'll be at least a couple of years.
Well, it'll be a couple of years to start the construction, and then you gotta do it, and then you gotta move in.
If I could speak to that a little bit, the way the library network is designed, it's a hub and spoke network.
Right.
So the hub is the downtown branch. All of the servers live at the downtown branch, and the internet connection that all of the other branches use lives at the downtown branch.
Got that.
The wisest thing to do would be to do downtown last, because if you take downtown out, all of the other spokes cannot connect to the hub, and then we would lose service for Polaris, which is our ILS, and credit card machines.
Yeah.
So
I guess the point I was going to make is this, that if we're going to wait 4 years to roll it out, is it really worth it to wait? And I don't know if it is, but my inclination when I read this was to spend the $150 and do it in anticipation of the fact that it's going to take us a while.
yeah, I really think that depends on how much of a gut and remodel is going to happen at each particular branch. So I think we could absolutely do that. It would be better for us and IT if we did that, but we do need to know if in the instance of Capitola, that thing's just going away, so why would you wire it?
Right, no, that would be a different
In
example.
Aptos, I don't know how many, I haven't read the plans, I don't know what the approved, model is like for Aptos.
Yeah, it's a pretty big remodel, so.
Yeah, so that might also be, why would you put lipstick on a pig?
Well, again, I don't know.
No offense.
But see, okay, so here's the answer to that. If Aptos costs $13,000, and again, it probably wouldn't take us that long to design the remodel plan for here and do the work. But, again, with all these things, it takes a couple of years to do anything.
Yes.
And so if I could have really fast internet for $13,000 for 2 or 3 years, to me, that might not be a bad idea, even though you would be.
I totally agree. I was just being very conservative.
And I appreciate that,
Deduplicate money and then spend it again.
Well, so my suggestion is, your recommendation was to basically include it as a placeholder, and I think if we put that in the contingency budget, and then maybe have you work on a little more refined plan, and
yes, absolutely.
Because again, I'm very eager. I was so excited when you gave that report about the high-speed internet. I'm sort of disappointed that we might have to wait for it. So again, but it doesn't make sense to do it, like I say, if you're going to pull it down, and they're in the middle of it. And I would say the same for Felton. I mean, we're going to be going faster than with Felton. So when that happens, why do it if you're going to change it out in a little bit? But if you're going to take years, or if it's a branch like a Live Oak, which I don't know what their cost would be, but whatever it is, we're not doing very much there. So we could probably do that one now.
Yeah, and Live Oak is actually in a better position wiring-wise than all of the other branches, because it has Cat 5e and is somewhat newer. So,
yes, it's newer. But again, so my suggestion when it comes time for making a motion, unless anybody objects, would be to go ahead and allocate the $150,000 to a contingency budget, and then to ask Lynn to come back with, a sort of little more phased plan so that we can make wise investments. Now, the next piece of this, which again is the $106,000.
Yes.
And you're talking about tariffs, and you've got 4 months worth of expenditures here, and I'm not sure I was following.
Okay.
Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now we're on an AT&T contract.
Right.
It's a CalNet 2 contract through AT&T.
Right.
Our contract expires on 7/31/2016. Janice and I went to the CNIC conference. I saw this thing coming. I said to my AT&T rep, can you tell me what the month-to-month cost will be if we have to go over? Because there's a lot of things we can't control in terms of rolling out this new high-speed network.
And the high-speed network is the $150,000 that we were just talking about.
Well, that's the count. We're talking about scenic itself.
Scenic itself.
Yeah, so what we're basically changing is it's a hub and a spoke. So all of the branches are going to have new interconnects, and the downtown branch will have a 10G connection to the internet. So that means that on 7/31, every single branch, including downtown, goes into a non-contract pricing. And AT&T's playing hardball, to be honest with you. I complained mightily to the people at Scenic, and to see if I could move it up the chain, because it really is, it felt kind of punitive to me. But they're doing it to other libraries who are also in the same position, unfortunately, and they're not backing down. So there's a couple of things I've done. I've also filled out and gotten quotes for another AT&T switched Metro Ethernet network through CalNet 3, which is on a month-to-month contract as a back pocket play if I needed it. So that would be considerably less than what we're paying, but we would still have to switch all the equipment. So it doesn't really make sense to switch it once to save some money and to switch it again. So what AT&T is going to do is give us out of contract pricing. They will not budge on it unless we buy AT&T services. So since we're not using AT&T, they're going to hammer us. And I'm just being really frank. So I don't know how Scenic is going to proceed with the rollout. I'm riding them so hard right now. I call every week. I found the guy who answered the RFP for Comcast, because we're moving to Comcast fiber. At the Scenic convention, I approached him. I asked him if there were any sunk costs, if he felt, confident that they could get it done on time. He said yes. Scenic has also given me assurances. We are now at the top of their list. We just had an onboarding call last week, but I just don't want there to be any gotchas. So if for some reason Comcast cannot trench or do what they need to do to get any particular branch, I felt it was prudent for the board to know and for a placeholder to be put in the budget if we had to go to those non-contract tariff prices. Does that make sense?
I get about 2/3 of it.
Okay.
I know a lot about our county's network, and I don't know anything about the library's network, so I'm trying to catch up.
Right.
So I hear what you're saying, and I guess I just have a couple of questions.
Sure.
What would be the steps that would be necessary in order to assure that we complete on time and that we don't have to confront this problem?
Everything we are doing that we have control of in library IT, we have done. We've purchased all the equipment, we've got the firewalls, we are picking every piece of low-hanging fruit off of that tree. That is within our control.
So what we need is?
So what we need is, we have no control over everything else. We have no control over how Comcast provisions the circuits. We have no control about when they come out to do site visits to provision the circuits. We have no control about when the technician actually comes and installs the equipment that we need. And we have no control of when the turn-up is going to actually happen. All I can do is...
The turn-up is like flip the switch.
Yeah, flip the switch and we're off of AT&T and onto CalRent. So I'm just trying to control what I can control and plan for the eventuality. It would be a terrible thing, but if something bad happens and we cannot move to Scenic or to CalRen in the order and timely fashion that we all seem to agree that we can do, we need to have some kind of backup plan. And I just don't want there to be a big expenditure to come out. So if you decide not to allocate it and put it as a set aside, that's fine, but you have to realize that those may be some costs that we will have to absorb, that I have really no control over.
I appreciate the full disclosure.
Yeah. Believe me, I'm riding the horse so hard, I'm whipping in, I'm calling every week, what are we doing, how's it going?
I guess the
Got to the top of the list, so.
Yeah, well, it sounds like they've done an amazing job. So the only other question I have, is there anything else that we could do, either at the county or at this board level?
Well, Scenic, AT&T is a platinum sponsor of CalRen. A co-sponsor, and I have the Scenic people, Janice and I schmoozed everybody we could find at Scenic in UC Davis to actually try to move this up the chain to get AT&T to say, no, we're not going to take little libraries and take bread out of the library basket. However, we have seen no movement for that. So because of that, I felt it was necessary to at least bring it to your attention.
So have you talked to Betty Saxon at AT&T?
No, our rep is Donna Schoniker.
Okay, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's as far as my clout will take me. So I would really appreciate.
Okay, so Betty Saxon is the Director of Intergovernmental Affairs for local AT&T.
Okay, great.
And I think if you call her and tell her that I suggested you call her to help you solve this problem,
great.
She's very, very helpful. She's not a technical person, but she is an administrative person who gets us out of jams every now and again.
Okay,
so.
yeah, I'll call anybody and I will do
I would suggest that, and if that doesn't work, I'll be happy to call her for you, but, again, if there's anything you could think of that any of the board members could do.
Yeah, well, we've spoken to the CEO of Scenic, I've spoken to other reps at Scenic. They're trying, but AT&T's really playing hardball.
It's worth a try.
They're not too happy about Comcast coming in and poaching, this big account. It's a big account for them. The other thing that gave me some hope is that this is the first CalRen connection that Comcast is involved with in the state. So I have a feeling that they're going to really bend over backwards to do a good job and to do things in a timely fashion, because it really, first impressions matter. And this is their first go-around with CalRen, and I know they want to impress. And that is why I have confirmation that there will be no sunk costs for trenching or any of that. They're absorbing all of those costs because they want to put their best foot forward to work with Scenic in the future. So,
well, we might all notify our Public Works Department the request for encroachment permits are coming, because I know sometimes we slow ourselves down when we don't even realize it.
Right.
So. Okay, so the next thing I had in here was an optional budget item discusses the increase in hours, and it was talking about 33 hours. And is that what is required, Janice, to get us to the goal?
That would get us to the goal.
Okay, and the amount of money for that is not clear to me.
This is the amount of money, primarily in staff time, that it would require to go up to the 33 hours.
Okay, so again, I would love to hear the new director's ideas about this, but my question is, why aren't we trying to make some progress? Or can we make some progress?
What our recommendation right now, when Susan comes, we can all talk about how this could work, but we were thinking since some of our branches are going to change very dramatically, but all of them are going to change, we might know better, because we have the new spaces, how we want to staff each branch and what the community wants and what the best hours for that branch would be with its new enhanced services. So we thought maybe we should partner those two items and wait and see what we really need.
Yeah, well, I don't know, again, I don't know if we're going to want to stick with the recommendations that we initially had, but that's all we have at the moment. So again, I don't mind getting the director's input, but in the same way as Lynn is suggesting a placeholder, I would suggest the same. So when it comes time for a motion, I'll incorporate that.
And we would need to figure on the increased PERS in healthcare.
So is the 217 understated?
It is understated because then we got additional figures after we made that estimate, so we would need to revisit that.
Okay. So do we have any idea, Marcus, on what that might?
No, I don't.
Okay. Do we know percentage-wise? Was it a big percentage?
I personally don't have to find out.
Oh, okay. Okay.
At 10%.
Yeah, so maybe another $20,000 or something, so let's say 250 for the sake of discussion. Now, again, the items that Lynn is suggesting, and I'm looking at the budget revenue assumptions, they seem kind of lower than I thought they would be. I wondered if you could speak to those revenue assumptions. It looks like the sales tax is going up from 7.5 to 7.8.
So I think
4%.
In
5%?
in coordination with some latest data from each county, looking at the amounts they were projecting in a revised estimate, these amounts are a little bit higher than our latest data, I think, a couple of weeks ago. We're targeting, I think, about 2%, 2.7% growth on sales tax. And of course, on the MOE side, that's now a fixed contribution, that's a defined amount per year. So I think the real vulnerabilities on the sales tax, and whether that's low or not, those are initial projections. They're a little bit higher.
This is 2.7%, right? Or 2.4 was it? I remember I asked the finance director when you use it, I think you guys talked. Because this is year-over-year growth you're seeing in adopted, so it reflects both the actuals this year and then the projections for next.
And the actuals for this year were higher, right?
Right, that's why year-over-year shows a bigger increase in the actual projection for next year.
I think our final was 2.7, right?
2.7 is what's stuck in my mind, is what it was told.
We were coming in a little bit lower, but
So again, I don't know, they seem a little low to me, but I really didn't have the time. Unfortunately, we're developing our budget to go through this in an enormous amount of detail, but that was one thing that did strike me. But again, in terms of my desire to keep the possibility of doing our expansion this year, we could go ahead and take the one-time funds that Lynn would require from the excess cash over reserve requirements, and then, use the budgetary resources that would exceed the amount that we would need for the, for the hours, and then again ask the library director to tell us if we should spend them that way. But so that would be that would conclude my change. Just a few minor adjustments.
Do the board members have any questions?
Yeah, go ahead. I just had a question for Susan, just so you have to forgive me, numbers is not my normal background, but, so the 150 recabling, you're saying to try to see if we can,
So there's 150 in recabling and
Yeah.
107 in the other piece that Lynn was telling us about. And those are one-time expenditures that would only be required if it was necessary, if we weren't going to wait for for the facilities plan to roll out.
Right.
And again, Lynn will give us some advice on whether or not we should phase some of that differently in the future, but for now, let's just assume Plan 1 would be measure as passes and we wait. Plan 2 would be Lynn will give us some other phasing that might include doing some and might include not doing some.
Right.
So she might not need all that money, but again, if she needed it all, that would be third plan, is that she'd have to do all these things. And we would take that money out of the excess cash reserves, which is again, one-time expenditure for a one-time activity. And then the ongoing money, which is allocated in this budget for those two purposes, would be able to be earmarked for the possibility of expansion based on, whatever the director tells us is a good idea or not.
so you're also leaning toward the one-time increase on those two positions, right?
The one-time increase on the two positions I would leave in the budget, but I would not act on the recommendation until the director came back with, those would be my,
Thanks for that.
unless somebody hates those ideas.
More questions?
So Janice, can you just explain a little bit more about the reclassification changes? You mentioned that there's different classifications for the different branches. Can you just explain that a little bit more, just to kind of get that?
The other, the downtown branch has a library assistant for the zoning one of those, so he has a classification. He's the only branch manager
So
that
that's
has
4.
that classification.
Okay.
Then all of the other branches except these 4, the branch manager is the library assistant 3. The 4 remaining branches, Boulder Creek, Felton, Garfield Park, and La Selva, are all library assistant 2s.
Okay, so
And so the proposal is that all the branch managers except the downtown branch manager be a library assistant 3.
So was this, because I know that at the city, we do recommendations upon requests of departments, and then also we have like a lottery system where departments are selected to do reclassifications, because otherwise it's not enough staffers just to do every single request. So was this one that was requested by the department, or was this one that was included in the...
This is one that the library very much was in favor of, and then came to the top in the classification study. So we felt like it was supporting what we already felt. And so we decided to go forward and see if...
But it was initiated by the library staff?
Yes.
A request to the HR department to analyze this?
Yes, and it ended up being part of the classification study.
So was this one of those studies where they went and studied the work and how it compared with the other branches and that whole thorough analysis that they go through?
That's right.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
But again, my thought was that the director may come and have some new ideas about organizations or structures, and again, it may be that the work that's been done is completely reflective of what she'd recommend, or it may be that she wants to make some changes. So I'm not suggesting that we change the budget allocation for those purposes, just that we not implement the reclassification reviews until the directors had an opportunity to review that.
All right, I have a couple of questions. If you're done, Martin, go ahead. Okay. On the maintenance of effort, I noticed it's about $11,000 increase, and I know all the background of the changes in the maintenance of effort through long negotiations. Why is it only $11,000 though? I mean, I understand that the county at this point is static. I understood the city was going to be had a step-up increase, and I understood that was more than $11,000. Do you have any easy explanation about why it's only 11?
I don't, other than that was the formula that we followed.
Okay.
So
Because I thought it was like closer to 90,000, 70. There's a $70,000 increase in the city of Santa Cruz was going to be putting in. So let's just double check that and make sure we're not using some old data points or something there, because I did think that that was the step up that we would see in the MOE.
And 30 for capital.
And 30 for capital, right.
And the capital you keep in your budget, that's your money.
Well, it was for city branches.
City branches.
But where we budget, I guess we haven't
Okay.
decided that exactly.
Okay, because I know that we have ours coming out of the library fund, so we're going to pay for it on our end. But if you want to pay for it through the library, that's okay. I just thought you might want to keep it in your own budget so that if it doesn't get spent or gets commingled, that we're not, running after your pink dollars and trying to make sure they don't get spent.
Well, I can tell you that the amount is included in the contribution, so I think it's just a variable of the actual expenditures on the MOE. So currently right now on the MOE, there's the portion of the guy that's more based, it's a fluid number based on property tax bills. So the actual results on that might be higher than when that rate is capitated. So that's my estimate. I can follow up and get
Okay, let's take a look at that, because I thought that we basically were fixing the reward this year on an ongoing basis. And
So I think we're fixing based on expectation, and the actual results are trending different. But it's still worth confirming. I agree with you. We'll do that to make sure we have to.
So it's probably a variation between the adopted budget and the actual.
Yeah.
We'll go down further into that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Talk to me about how much we have in reserves. I saw that, Susan pulled that map off consent, which is sort of the budget snapshot. Talk to us about kind of the reserve policies. You mentioned previously a 2-month reserve plus some other amount. Help me understand that, what the policy levels are and how much we actually have.
Our basic reserve is a 2-month reserve. At $2.2 million currently, it'll increase up to about $2.3 million in this coming budget cycle. So it's based on 2 months. So as the budget grows, there'll be a higher contribution to the reserve.
Okay.
That is the only board-approved reserve currently in place, the 2-month operating reserve. There are aspiration goals to fund books, for example, at a certain level. There are reserve funds, restricted donation funds that are being held in place. But as far as pure operating reserve, it is that 2-month operating reserve of $2.2 million for its current balance, as demonstrated in the March capital report.
Okay.
Snapshot report.
And is the $2.2 million, is that our policy level and our funding level? We're actually funded at the policy
We're
level?
funded at the policy level.
Okay. So we don't have excess reserves per se. I saw the...
No, we do. So our pool cash balance is, as of March, is $3.5 million essentially. We have a static gold reserve of $2.2 million. So the excess is $1,234,000.
But is that just due to cash flow or is that due to fund account? I mean, what's the fund account?
That's cash flow.
That's cash flow. So presumably, we just got payment from the Board of Equalization, so...
It's a reliable estimate, meaning that's a reliable base to base on. It's been growing steadily.
It is.
So like we have, does everyone run the dough?
No, I get it.
It's real money. It's a cash flow. It's real cash. I can tell real cash when I see it.
So as a finance director, I have to say caution, right? So in June, the last month of the fiscal year, we'll have 3 payroll cycles. There'll be about $300,000 or $400,000 extra hit to the budget that month. We still haven't fully budgeted for the election costs that are going to be in this year's cycle. That's probably going to over magnitude $150,000.
What, the election costs, total costs?
Yeah, I'm ballparking.
Oh, I don't know what you include in the budget, but the total election costs are from $350,000 to $400,000.
For the LFA.
For the LFFA election.
Okay, so that's going to be, so you start doing some details.
Right. So I guess what I want to clear picture of, I understand cash flow, but the question is what's our ending fund balance projected for June 30th?
Yeah, I would, based on that, I would probably lower it down to about $400,000 to $500,000 is what I would reasonably say will be left available fund balance for appropriation above the reserve level.
Okay, that's helpful for me to understand. And then I guess the other point I would note is that our material budget, unfortunately, looks like it's dropping by about $130,000 this year.
That's based, we have a formula that it is 8% of the revenue. That's what the number is, but that's just the formula.
It's just a formula based on 8%. Okay.
Our goal is 10%.
Okay. And then my last question is, when Measure S passes, I would assume that some of these costs that are going out the door today would come back in. And presumably those aren't reflected here. There would be a new budget line that says reimbursed for Measure S. Is that correct?
Yes, certainly all the direct costs, the contract costs. What we haven't talked about is library support costs for Measure S activities.
The Measure S budget is already determined. There's an amount that's going to be allocated, and it's going to be distributed by a formula to the various entities. So that's it. There's no, and that's done by the auditor's office, and that comes off the top. So that's the only administrative expense associated with Measure S. So if we wanted to allocate Measure S money for other purposes, we could, but we already have an agreement as to how that's going to be done. And so there's not money from Measure S that's going to go into the operating budget.
I don't believe that's exactly correct. I mean, if you recall, we had an issuance cost, and remember, we're authorized to issue up to $67 million, and we had a plan to allocate to the jurisdictions. I believe it was 62 was the final figure. So there's a chunk there that's issuance costs. We passed a resolution that identified the specific contracts for issuance costs, and so those monies have been fronted by the library board, and I would expect they would show back up in the budget when Measure S passes.
In addition, the election costs are substantial.
Right.
And there are several contract costs out there that led up to the Measure S. MBS is among them. TW3, or I forget the TDWD. Yeah, and there's some of those costs that the library's been supporting.
Well, again, that's the budget allocation that we've already made. So if now somebody wants to change the rules and take money from Measure S to pay for the things that we already budgeted to be paid for, we could, but we never agreed to that, and I don't see, we do have in our issuance costs the expectation that we're going to be paying the bondholder, we're going to be paying, the lawyers and the people like that need to be paid to issue the bonds, but not that we would be doing it for ourselves, for operating purposes. That was what we were going to do ourselves. But, again, we can consider anything.
I guess I'm a little puzzled because I'm adopting a resolution that Rich brought before us that said exactly the rewarding those things. So maybe we could just... Well,
we did. That would be a good thing. We could get an update on that because we did do that and said at the end, if we had money at the end, that we would reimburse ourselves. Was that what you were thinking about? Remember at the end we said that? Or?
Oh yeah, Rich. I remember something different than what happened.
We have it's been a while since I looked at that resolution. We have a reimbursement resolution, and it is drawn up according to the Joint Exercise of Powers Act. And so, yes, there's a reimbursement resolution out there. The board can decide, on how much to reimburse and those kinds of things. But there's a commitment from the board, the LFA board, to the library JPA board to those services, to reimburse for those services. And that reimbursement includes in-kind costs from staff.
Well, let's take a look at that because my understanding was that if Measure S passed, there was going to be a chunk that was going to come back. There was costs associated, with all this work we've done with the election, Mr. Hill, with the TW.
My vision on that was to bring back a document that the board would approve and say, these are the reimbursable costs. And so, there's more conversation to be had with that.
Right.
Well, and my inclination is regardless of, how we do the transaction, relative to the Measure S and also relative to the access funds is to, given that we are about to embark on these, construction projects where there may be an anticipated cost, because even the $62 million was based on, good estimates, but, costs are probably going up. That to the extent that we can have, reserves there for things that come up in the process, that, I think we just need to be really careful and have the ability to do that, or there might be some other things. I don't have a good idea of, does that, what rises to the top? That's one big consideration that I'm aware of, but I don't know, is it more books? Or is it something else like that? So I would, at this point...
You had to make that decision, we didn't.
Right, and I'd like to have the new directors as well, so I would prefer to just sort of put the money aside and then get more information and just be conservative, particularly if we're embarking on this major construction project.
So I guess it's just the point that I wanted to make is it sounds like at this point we're going to be ending with a fund balance of around, forgive me if I'm using the wrong term, but fund balance, excess reserve, but around $400,000 to $500,000 potentially. And so then if we were to be allocating $250 from it for the month-to-month AT&T bill potentially and recabling if we need to do it, and I certainly hope that we would find a way to pass Measure S and not need to do all that, then we'd be taking another $250 hit from it. So I think I'm probably not super comfortable dipping into that fund balance beyond that at this stage. But you know, I'm only on board.
But let's remember, the vote needs to be adopted unanimously, so we all have to reach an agreement. So, no, we're not going to do it tonight. No, I know, we're not going to do it. So, but again, I want to make sure that everybody knows that, you know, we're going to have to figure this out, just like everything else we do. So, yeah. No, with you.
Susan, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
When you were eyeing the cabling cost at 150, were you looking at the ending fund balance to pay
Yes.
out of that?
150 plus 107.
Right, and we're
So-
guessing that the ending fund balance will be somewhere between 200,000 or 300,000?
No, 4 to 5.
4 to 5.
5.
Thank you.
And remember that the fund balance recommendation that is here now is about 17% of our revenues, and the county's got about 8% of revenues in its fund balance. So that's already twice what we have. And again, that's why I was saying I think we should look at it next year. But you know, I think it's very healthy. The fund balance and the reserves that we have are very, very healthy. And the excess fund balance is truly that, excess to a very healthy fund balance. So my hope would be that we could at least just reserve the money for the opening of the branches. And if the director thinks that's a good idea, then we could have it there to proceed, and we'd still have the money for the cabling, and we'd be all good to go.
One point I would make about sort of reserve levels for an institution like this is, you know, Capitola, we have a similar financing structure, which is probably quite different than the county, to the libraries actually, where 50% of our revenue comes from sales tax. And unfortunately, sales tax is a highly volatile revenue stream, when I think the county's revenue streams, I'm sure they're much more volatile than you would like, but property tax plays a much more significant role and is unlikely to move as much. So I can imagine a difference where, you know, different reserve level
Yes.
with different sort of revenue streams would make sense.
At the
Yes.
city, we have a 2-month reserve
Yes.
policy as well. And one of the considerations that we're looking ahead is the ongoing repairs and healthcare costs, and also the potentiality for a slowdown of the economy, which, you know, we've had, like, 4 straight years of growth, and we're going to have one here pretty soon.
It's inevitable.
So having a better than, you know, pretty healthy reserve is a good idea to avoid going through what we did before, you know, which is incredibly painful. So at least at the city, we're being a little extra conservative because the recession was super painful, and to the extent that we can avoid doing that.
Yes.
And we're at 25% capital, and I feel like that's too low, so put it all in perspective. And so I guess the only other point, you know, because we're not going to be adopting this tonight, sort of giving staff direction on things to come back, is I guess I would love to see us be able to hit a 10% target on materials. You know, I don't know how that would be done if it would require reserve spending, which I just, of course, suggest just spoke against, so I will not turn it down. The money's not doing anyone with any good in the bank, right? But that is a soft spot in my heart, at least, is making sure that we've got the materials, because that's, you know, the people, the facilities, and the materials are all the stools on which we sit, and are all so important.
So let me just say one more thing about open hours, and I won't disclose where this came from, but I have heard it on more than one occasion. We have a member of our inner circle, if you will, at the county that is very, very involved in all things that we do in this community. And when the discussion on Measure S came up in the very beginning, he went home to his wife and explained to his wife that there was going to be a measure put on the ballot for facilities for the library, and she is an avid library user, and she adores the library branches. And she said, why on earth would we be putting money into facilities when the doors aren't even open? So you have to understand that keeping doors open is a really important consideration for our libraries, and I think it is in some ways, even more important than the materials budget, because I think access is the key. You know, you got to get people in the door in order to be able to use the resources. And so anyway, that's my pitch, and I know we'll get to talk about it more as we go along.
All right.
Okay, so I have a motion if you're ready. Oh, we need public comment.
We talked about it before.
Okay.
We went from questions right into opinions, I think. Is there any public comment on the budget?
We exhausted.
Well, we'll wait for next month, Sean. You get
We'll have some. Materials versus hours, reserves, nothing?
Never thought of that.
All right. Neither of we.
Okay, so I think I have it all. And again, the staff recommendation at this point is to accept it and give any recommendations on additional reports. So here's my motion. It would be accept and file the proposed budget materials, to request staff to refer the fund balance policy and the reserve policy for the director to review by December of next year, to request the staff to allocate the funds for the reclassification of the branch managers to the new director for her consideration this summer. To request the staff to return with a report on the impacts of moving $150,000 and $107,000 for the technology updates to the contingency budget from the excess cash noted on page 20 of our agenda packet today. To request the staff to return with a report on the impacts of allocating approximately $250,000 from the proposed IT savings for a possible library hour expansion to be reviewed and considered for recommendation by the new library director. To request staff to review the maintenance of effort requirement figures to assure their accuracy. To request the director to review and advise us of any additional budget recommendations that she may have that we might not have thought about. To request staff to review the issuance costs and to provide an additional report on the issuance cost for Measure S and their impact on our budget development for next year, and request the staff to develop options for consideration for a 10% material budget allocation. I think I got everybody.
All right. So is there?
So that's my motion.
Is there a second?
You can't ask a question unless you second it.
Otherwise, we're looking for a new motion. All right, so the motion fails for lack of a second. Is there another motion? Or further discussion?
Yeah, maybe. What is it? So Susan, with respect to the item related to the hours, I just wanted to be clear about what we're recommending there. I'm sorry.
Okay. I went through it really quickly. I requested, and again, I paraphrase from these notes, but what I did was I requested staff to come back with a report on the impacts of allocating $250,000 from the proposed IT savings for a possible library hour expansion to be reviewed and considered and for recommendations to be made by the director. So I'm not suggesting we do it. I'm suggesting, like we have a placeholder for the 2 IT projects, that we would have a placeholder that would allow for the possibility of a library expansion. The budget provides the 150 and the 107 from ongoing revenues for one-time expenditures. I'm proposing that we use other one-time expenditures, namely the excess reserves, to take care of the possibility that we would have to do the expansion on the IT side of things, but with the hope that we wouldn't have to. So if we wouldn't have to, then the money would go back to the excess reserve category, or we could leave it in contingencies or do it.
So you're saying that currently the cabling related expenses are they're one time, right?
They are one time.
They're not budgeted as ongoing.
Well, they're coming out of our ongoing budget, right?
No, they're
going from fund to fund.
placeholders.
So that's the part where I'm going to
Yeah, I have the
They're
same
not-
question.
They're not, they're placeholders right now, so you would know how much each would
But they're one
cost.
time, they're not necessarily, unless the way you...
Are they reflected in this budget?
They are
Yeah, but they're
not,
down below.
They're below.
They're not in the operating.
they're not in the operating.
Side of it. So they're sort of separate as one time.
That was the only part of the motion that I didn't understand.
Correct, switching.
Were you suggesting spending our $2.2 million designated reserve or the fund balance that we're talking about?
I'm talking about the money that's on page 20 in our agenda packet that's identified as excess cash over reserves, which again,
So that, I think
Marcus,
fund balance.
I think it's the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing.
Well, it's, but this, I assume this money is not included here.
Right.
Because I assume that Marcus
That's-
anticipated expenditures for this. So this would be available as additional to the budget, which could be used for materials or other things.
Right, but it's one time.
It is one time.
It's not. And ours is ongoing.
Ours is ongoing.
Right. So that was where you lost me on that as well. I didn't quite understand.
Well, I'm not asking to allocate the money to do it. I was making a suggestion of where it could be coming from and asking the staff to come back with a report that would tell us the impacts of that. And they may be telling us that,
Well, I think that would be better to say, instead of saying, switching the dollars, to just be clear, we want
Okay.
to understand.
okay,
Because, I mean, it's actually already on here on this list as an optional
Right.
sort of thing, although it would be good to obviously incorporate it into the operating budget.
that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to move it up the line.
Okay.
Okay, so again, let me go through them a little more slowly. The first recommendation was to accept and file the proposed budget. Is there any objection to that? Okay, that's just accepting it. And then we would be referring the fund balance policy and the reserve policy to the director for review in 6 months, which is, I put December of 2016. Is that acceptable to everyone? Okay. We would be allocating the funds for the reclassification of the 4 positions and referring the implementation of that allocation to the director for review and recommendation as soon as possible.
So include that in the budget, and that's already.
That is already in
It
the
already is
budget.
in that, so I'm not changing that. I'm just saying, let's not implement that until we get the director's advice about whether she thinks that's a good idea. Okay, and then I would want a report on the possibility of allocating the $150,000 and the $107,000 for technology updates to contingency. So I wouldn't be allocating it to a line item in a budget. I'd be putting it in our contingency budget from various sources, including the possibility of using the excess cash for that purpose. So that would just be a report.
Do we keep a contingency?
We don't keep a contingency?
No, we have,
Contingency is the fund balance. Right.
correct.
There's just a fund balance.
So you don't, okay, so in the county, if you allocate money for a specific purpose, like these computer things, she gets to go ahead and do them, no matter what.
Right.
And if you allocate it to contingencies, then what would normally happen is she'd come back and tell us, here's what we need that money for, we're ready to go. And so I was just hoping that we could get a little bit more information from her to do that.
I think it's a language difference.
Maybe it's a structural language.
Yeah, I think that right now, for me at least, the concept of funding from excess reserve means probably the same thing, basically.
Right.
To what you're saying.
Okay, so what would be the way that I would articulate that we would be considering spending or considering allocating the money for technology, including the possibility of using the excess cash, with a proviso that she come back? Is that, come back with any further?
So it's similar to the other, where it's in here, but we would get the director's
That's-
input. Because that's
well-
in here, right? Those expenses are in.
Well, I'm not necessarily looking for the director's input because I'm not.
I'm sorry, right.
I was hoping that Lynn would give us input on spending the money, but that, but we would also consider the possibility of financing that from the excess reserves. But that's just a possibility.
Well, and right now it's being proposed that it be,
From the excess reserves.
From the excess.
so it's no difference, right? That's where it's coming from anyway?
Okay?
Yeah, I think we're good there. I think
And then maybe we're good
I
then.
think maybe the only difference here was that we were gonna hope for, probably when Measure S passes, is maybe a more kind of refined plan about how the retabling would work, and what makes sense to move forward now, what makes sense to move forward later. I don't think we need more details now, but basically we'd be authorizing the expenditure here today from the excess reserves, and obviously, you know, it's a couple different paths, depending on what happens with Measure S.
Right.
Okay.
Does that work?
I think that sounds like we're heading in the right direction.
Good.
So we would be requesting the IT director to return with a further report at a future date to be determined on the requirements for the technology upgrade, right?
Yeah, some strategic decisions about timing and
Okay. And we would ask, so that's that one. And then we would ask staff to return with a report on allocating approximately $250,000 for possible library hour expansion to be reviewed and recommended by the new manager, and to give us ideas about funding streams for that.
You manage the new director.
The new director.
And the only thing I would add to that is that we have Marcus update the numbers.
Right. We'll
And
update
that's what I
the
expected to
But, so that would be.
Yeah, that's what I said. That's what I said.
that's what I just showed.
Yeah.
And that would be an ongoing impact in the operating budget.
That's correct. So we would get a further report and review of that possibility. Okay, then we would request staff to review the maintenance of effort requirement figures, which again was the question that Jamie asked. We would request the director to review and advise us if she has any other ideas, because, you know, her time is going to be very short, unfortunately, for giving us that input. And request the staff to review the issuance costs and provide us with additional materials on the issuance costs.
Do you just mean issuance costs?
Well, for whatever the agreement says.
Okay, so referring back to the agreement, because the actual cost of issuance will be taken out of the bonds themselves. Okay.
Right, it's really more on the reimbursement.
Okay, all right, I understand.
Provisions of the agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it's the issuance cost agreements, let's call it that for shorthand.
Yeah, the reimbursement.
Reimbursement agreements. And provide for additional report on that and its impact on our budget, if any. And then we would request staff to develop options for a 10% material budget allocations, same as the hours allocation. It's just an idea that Jamie would like to have explored. And then the only addition I would make to the last one is to get an estimate of fund balance by year-end update by the finance director at our next meeting.
And I think maybe the journey, Marcus, is the excess reserve, what that cash position would
What
be.
you might have left to play with.
Yeah.
Thank you. You got it. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Told you we could do it.
A little hiccup there, but we made it. All right, is there any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. And with that, it takes us to item F, which is our monthly financial snapshot.
And I would move for approval of item F. I had removed it because that excess fund balance was moving around for me, so. Yeah, terminology, I'll learn.
All right, is there a second? Second. Is there any public comment on item F, which is a snapshot of the library's fiscal picture? Seeing none, return to the board. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And with that, we are adjourned for our next regular meeting.
No? Oh, no.
We're not.
No, we have the incident log discussion.
But I can make it fast.
I'm sorry, I put item F there and I got through it. I thought we were done. We are not adjourned. Okay, item F, the incident law discussion. And this is on the agenda. I think we talked about it briefly at our last meeting. Janice offered as brought us some information here to maybe begin the conversation.
Basically, what this is I'm sharing information with you in preparation for a much longer discussion when Susan arrives. So we can talk about how we handle incidents, what the problems are, what the pattern is. It definitely is escalating. So what I thought would be helpful is if I shared with you the policies that are in place right now for the way we handle incidents, and a little bit of background material. That is really all I want to do, is just so that you have that, so when we start that discussion, you'll be ready.
You guys are tough, that's all I gotta say.
We are tough. We didn't start out that way, but we are now.
Yeah.
Are there any questions for staff?
No, I think it's important that we sort of get educated on all that, because I know it's a big issue.
And this is going to be very important when we discuss what we do next. We are definitely going to have to talk about this.
And it relates to facility design.
Absolutely.
So it's a big emerging issue too. So
Yeah, it's very big.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do want to focus our board's attention on this. I think as we move forward, I appreciate you bringing some of the information to us now, so we had a chance to read through some of the policies that were in place, and I will be looking forward to conversations at future board meetings with our new director about this.
An 8-hour session? Is that what you're...
Yes, I was hoping for an 8-hour session. Is there anyone from the public that would like to talk to us a little bit about the incident law discussion and our patron policy, conduct and suspension policy? Okay. Seeing none, close the public comment. Anybody else want to make any comments on the policy or the incident log? And this will be a continued conversation that I expect to have at future meetings as
And
well.
just let us know if you have further questions or other kinds of reports you would want from us. We'll prepare them.
All right. With that, I think we're adjourned.
We got it this time.